All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and we're back in the studio after a week of Star Wars greatness. We had Star Wars Celebration, we had Galaxy's Edge, my first time there. I finally broke the curse, and of course we had the premiere of Obi Wan Kenobi, and then we subsequently had another episode this past Wednesday. I didn't have my audio equipment, so I couldn't get you that review right away for the first two episodes. So now I'm just going to bundle all my thoughts for the previous three episodes into this singular episode. And it's the halfway point of the series, so I think it's fitting that we do it this way. So overall, I think the series has been good, with sprinkles of greatness throughout. I think episode 3 was the strongest installment of the series so far, because I think it was consistently great from start to finish, whereas in the first two episodes, I found there were moments that were a bit lackluster for me. But I think we're on an upward swing, and the last three episodes will truly be a roller coaster and keep that momentum going. So I'm going to start this review the most logical way I can, and that is by praising Ewan's performance. He slipped back into this character so seamlessly after all these years, it's like no time had even passed. I loved his tired version of Obi-Wan's voice. It shows the pain, anguish that he's been going through all these years, and how he's pretty much given up. And I think he's brought a lot of subtleties back from his prequels performance and also added some new ones that go a long way to conveying his mental state right now. His eyes have really been the star of the show for me because in the first two episodes, he didn't really have that much dialogue, and his facial expressions and his eyes have really been conveying everything for me. I mean, when he finds out Anakin's alive and you see his eyes racing back and forth and the disbelief on his face, or when he's having this conversation with Owen and he's scolding him and he kind of looks at the ground a lot and he almost seems like a child again, like he doesn't value himself that much. He does all this while keeping that classic Obi-Wan charm and wit within his arsenal that he pulls out every once in a while and you say, there he is, there's that old Obi-Wan we know. I also appreciate his physicality. I mean, Obi-Wan is of course rusty after all these years in hiding, but he's been kicking ass and the hand-to-hand combat choreography has been really enjoyable to watch. Watching him struggle to reconnect with the Force has also been a real big highlight for me in this show. Ultimately, by the end of this series, he's going to get to that point where in Rebels, he's forgiven himself and he's now this wise old man who has no more regrets in life and he simply moves forward. But at this point, he's just a mess. And the fact that he tries to contact Qui-Gon knowing that he's cut himself off from the Force and he still has these towering regrets is just so funny because he's really trying, and it's like, Obi-Wan, it's not going to work, buddy. You know that. He's really in denial with himself. It is cool that it took him saving Leia to reconnect with the Force. And the minute he reconnects with the Force, all of the stuff starts flooding in. He reconnects with Vader and Anakin. He begins to meditate again in the next episode. It really begins his journey to re-understanding himself and having a better relationship with the Force. And the final piece I want to talk about is I love that Ewan brought back some of Obi-Wan's mannerisms, especially him twirling and rubbing his mustache or his beard when he's thinking, his sense of humor with the Jawa and with the con man on the one planet, and then, of course, him getting beat up and yelling in pain. I loved when he got his hand punctured by the guy with the horns on his head. It very much reminded me of when he kicked General Grievous's solid metal leg and thought that was a good idea, and he screamed in pain because of it. All of that was just classic, vintage Obi-Wan, which is really what I wanted to see in this series as well. Moving on to Leia, which I think was a genius inclusion in this show. It not only adds context to her relationship with Obi-Wan in the originals, but it also adds to her relationship with her adopted family. One of the highlights of this series so far is seeing her and Bail's relationship, even if it's only been displayed in one or two scenes. It really emphasizes why Leia never forgave Vader like Luke did at the end of Return of the Jedi. This is my favorite part of one of the best Star Wars books out there, Bloodlines. Leia hates Vader and hated him for what he did and never accepted him as her father. And with her endearing relationship shown here with Bail, you can really see why. The little Leia actress has been killing it so far, and I'm so excited to see more of her in the series. I think Reva has been a really intriguing character so far, and I like how they leave her backstory and motivations up in the air, and you only learn a little bit about her every episode, so you can really theorize with her, which is a lot of fun. My personal theory is that she was one of the Padawans in the opening Order 66 scene, and when Obi-Wan visits the Jedi Temple with Yoda, he either doesn't take her with him or he doesn't save her, and now she has this resentment for him and swears vengeance against him. And I think this also kind of adds to why she knows that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, because she was in the Jedi Temple when he came through and killed everyone, and especially killed the children. And Obi-Wan saw those holotapes, so it's very possible that she also saw the holotapes where Emperor Palpatine called him Darth Vader. So all this is just my theory, but I think this will start to come to light over the next couple episodes. I'm really excited to see the conclusion of her story and where it wraps up at the end of this 6-episode series. I really do like Moses' betrayal of this unhinged, vengeful, and frankly childish Inquisitor. I think she brings a lot of great nuances and a lot of anger and fear into her performance. I think what's really interesting is, does she really care about being the Grand Inquisitor like we saw in Episode 3? Or is she just using the Empire as a means to an end for her to get to Kenobi? Because they have the resources, and this is the best way for her to be face-to-face with him again. So I don't really think she has a lot of love for the Empire. She obviously doesn't care about the other Inquisitors. So it will be interesting where her allegiances lie. I think she's really out for herself here. Jumping back to the Leia and Obi-Wan relationship, I think it's given a lot of great opportunities for dialogue and storytelling. I so appreciate that Padme is getting her flowers and being front and center of most of their conversations. I feel Padme is very rarely mentioned or brought up in Star Wars after the prequels, and I really enjoy that they're showing her respect here. She was such a great character in the prequels and in Clone Wars, and she deserves to be talked about just as much as Anakin, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan. I especially liked that they showed how much Obi-Wan admired her as a person and as a friend. He was there at her highest highs and for sure her lowest lows. He was the one that told her, "I'm about to kill your husband and the father of your child." We also unexpectedly get some Obi-Wan backstory from when he was taken as a youngling. We hear about the flashes of his father and his mother and of his real brother, who we only hear a little bit about, but it just drives another dagger through the heart because he had a real brother and he was taken away from him, and then Anakin was the other real brother he had, and then he was taken away from him by his own actions, so that just hurt. That was just kind of mean to do. I do wish that Obi-Wan said something about Anakin to Leia when she asked about her father, but I think he's still not ready to talk about it, especially talk about it to someone who he failed the most in Leia, because Leia doesn't have a father now because of Obi-Wan to some degree. So I think part of him is like, I am not prepared for this conversation. Another intriguing piece of the dialogue that they had in this conversation was that Obi-Wan referred to being taken into the Jedi Order as his new family. And of course, he's referencing Ahsoka and Anakin, and by proximity, Padme. Referring to it as a family really stuck out to me. Obi-Wan has always towed that line of being the most dogmatic and loyal council member to also being on the other side with Anakin, Ahsoka, and Satine, where he thought of leaving the Order. He knew his apprentice was doing the wrong thing and also thought about leaving the Order. So I feel like this word choice said a lot about Obi-Wan's past and his list of regrets. So I really, really liked that they used the word family and not just, I got some new friends when I left my home. I like that they use family. So I guess I should probably talk about Hayden and Vader now, right? Right? I should? Yeah, okay, well. So, first, I know Vader was awesome and terrifying, but I think the most haunting shot in the show so far was seeing Anakin in his robes again while Obi-Wan hallucinates him, seeing him from a distance. It was really so scary because, of course, Anakin had this 1,000-yard stare, but also it was like a ghost following Obi-Wan and haunting him. Of course, this is in Obi-Wan's head, but you have to believe that Darth Vader has a hand in Obi-Wan seeing this vision of Darth Vader's old self and really toying with Obi-Wan's emotions at this moment. It was such an effective shot, and of course, seeing Hayden as Anakin again, even if it was from a distance, was fantastic. It was that Revenge of the Sith, evil, dark Anakin. But of course, let's talk about the real star of the show, which was the actual Vader action and appearance. I think Hayden, once again, has nailed the physicality, and it's really impressive to see him match David Prowse's original performance and kind of add these new elements of a younger Vader, if that's the right word for it. Of course, James Earl Jones' voice was as good as ever. I know it was either an AI-generated version of him, like they did with Luke, or it was actually him re-recording lines. Regardless, it came out incredible. I did appreciate how Vader's entrance into the village was almost surreal. Like, this is this giant, otherworldly figure in Darth Vader that people only hear whispers of, but they really put him into this grounded setting, and it was cool to see this almost fictionalized monster to most people in the flesh. And of course, he went through that village and he snapped kids' necks. He snapped a random woman's neck. He dragged people through the mud and dirt. It was crazy brutal, and all to just get a rise out of Obi-Wan. I think they did a great job with it. And I'm definitely excited to hear more of Darth Vader's struggles and pain throughout these next couple episodes, because we really did only get a sliver here, even though it was a grand sliver. I still feel like there's a lot more to hear from Vader's side. Though this fight felt a little early for me, I know they're trying to do it to show Kenobi's evolution here. He's very much not connected with the Force. He hasn't fought in years, and by the end of the series, I'm sure they'll have a rematch. But I did enjoy that Darth Vader was really toying with him throughout the confrontation. He just slowly stalks his prey, kind of like Michael Myers in Halloween. Just walks. Doesn't need to run, doesn't need to go fast. Just walks slowly. He knows he's not getting away. And by the end of the fight, he kind of had enough. You could see his physicality change, that before he literally roasts Obi-Wan alive, you could see he marches onto the set, like, super determined, and then just grabs Obi-Wan. Like, he could have done this immediately, but he waited till now to use the Force choke. And he just walks right in, grabs Obi-Wan and said, okay, no more playing around, we're doing this. And then he obviously lights him on fire, creates a Kenobi slow roast, which was brutal. And hearing Obi-Wan's screams were eerily similar to Anakin's on Mustafar. Obviously, that's what they were going for, but I think Ewan's betrayal here was fantastic to match what Hayden did in Revenge of the Sith. I am curious why Vader did let him get away. I've seen Vader walk through flames. I don't think that would stop him, but I think based on the camera shots, Vader was very contemplative in that moment and might have had some remorse for what he did. And, maybe that wasn't as satisfying as he'd imagined it would be. Remember, Vader is not in some perfect mental state where he's like this statue of evil. Like, he is also tormented and has regrets as well. So I think it's an interesting choice to see him walk away. And I did really like the camera work of all these different angles. And even though Vader's mask isn't expressive, kind of like the Mandalorians, you can tell what is going on in his head just by the way they framed him and angled him. So I very much appreciated that. I think the first time I watched it, I was like, damn, why did he just let him get away? He said he just wanted to keep torturing him. Like, this was only the beginning. But I think it was a deliberate choice to say, hey, Vader's also not good right now. He might be powerful, but of course, dark side users up in the head, they're worse off than everyone else. Just like Maul in Clone Wars and then Rebels. So once again, this is a limiting series. We don't even know where the next episode will start off, so we can't really judge it right now, but I'm excited to see the continuation of this. It was early in the show that they did meet. I think everyone expected their first confrontation to be more grand and more of a spectacle, but I think this makes sense for the show. I guess maybe part of me wishes they didn't, clash sabers so early, but that's what they went with, and I think it's just there to show that Kenobi will eventually progress. So yeah, we'll see. So now I've discussed the characters, I do want to talk about some of the moments I enjoyed and deserve to be discussed a little bit more. So Obi-Wan and Owen's discussion was mostly shown in the trailers, but it was interesting that Obi-Wan seems bent on training Luke. I would think the last thing a Jedi would want to do after losing their Padawan to the dark side is train someone else, kind of like what Luke did in The Last Jedi, or kind of what Yoda did at the end of Revenge of the Sith and just went into hiding. Part of me thinks Obi-Wan doesn't want to have him grow up without any guidance and eventually hurt people because of his powers. And then another part of me thinks Obi-Wan still feels bound to the Jedi Code, like he's always been, and feels obligated to train him, even though he probably doesn't want to actually train Luke anymore. Because the last thing Obi-Wan wants to do is train someone else, I don't think, if he's still thinking about Anakin every day of his life. I think another part of me thinks that, Obi-Wan's still kind of holding on to that Chosen One prophecy. Since he does mention it to Maul in Rebels, he still believes in the Obi-Wan prophecy like Qui-Gon told him. And in Revenge of the Sith, he always is the one to bring it up. He goes to Mace Windu. Is he not the Chosen One? Is he not the one that's meant to bring balance to the Force? So I'm sure we'll get a conversation with Qui-Gon in the coming episodes, even though Liam Neeson says, I don't do live-action TV. Dude, you did the animation in Clone Wars. You're doing Tales of the Jedi. We know you're coming back. Don't even lie anymore. But I do think it makes sense that Qui-Gon did impart this knowledge onto him, and now he thinks, maybe Darth Vader wasn't the one, but maybe his son is. So we shall see. There's a lot of reasons I enjoyed Episode 3, but the one that stuck out to me at least was it portrayed his mental state without him having to say he's in a bad mental state. It was more through action. Basically, Obi-Wan gets everyone caught because of his impatience. Now remember, this is Obi-Wan, the most patient man of the prequel and Clone Wars era, always reminding Anakin, patience, has now become the very thing he swore to destroy when teaching Anakin. He lashed out at Leia for asking him a question as they got to the rendezvous point. He was pessimistic. He was looking all over the place. He doesn't believe anyone's coming. He's like, we have to get out of here. We were lied to. We shouldn't have trusted him. And because of that, he gets into a fight with these stormtroopers, which then alerts Reva and Vader to his presence on this planet, only to run into the person who was meant to save him only a couple moments later. I'm surprised the girl wasn't like, yo, I was literally 5 minutes out. You couldn't just chill for a little more? Now they know we're here. I wouldn't say it's subtle, but it's kind of like an underlying plot theme for him to really get them in trouble because of his lack of patience. And he's always been the most patient person in the room. So I really just enjoyed that through his actions, he ultimately gets them caught. So him being more cautious actually caused them to get caught, which is cool. Because up until this point, a lot of the time, it was just Obi-Wan saying, I'm not the man I used to be. Find someone else or something like that. But now we see through his action that he really isn't the man he used to be. I really loved the Quinlan Vos deep cut in this episode. Obi-Wan and him had such a cool and interesting and complicated relationship in Clone Wars because they were really polar opposites. I mean, him and Anakin were polar opposites, but him and Quinlan really were, and that's why they worked so well. And I love that they had this history together that was unspoken at that point. And then their relationship continued into the book Dark Disciple with Quinlan, Ventress, and him all on this mission that I really hope you guys can read. It's really great. It was an unfinished Clone Wars arc. I highly recommend to anyone that liked the Clone Wars, please read Dark Disciples. It's fantastic. And Quinlan was a really interesting character, and the book made him so much better. And I like that after this whole ordeal with Ventress, Obi-Wan, and the book events, he's back out trying to help people, at least part-time. I know she mentions he helps sometimes, but that was cool to hear. And the quote that he put really stuck out to me. Only when your eyes are closed can you see the way. And this hit me as a reference to Kanan and his journey in Rebels losing his eyesight. So I'm guessing you want to hear my thoughts on the Grand Inquisitor. No, I don't think he's dead. They wouldn't retcon Rebels. They never would let that happen. Dave Filoni would leave Lucasfilm if that happened. So either it's not the same Grand Inquisitor as it was in Rebels, or he will be brought back to life somehow, which, of course, I hate. Modern Star Wars plays with the idea of death and the concept of death way too much. I don't think George Lucas ever intended for it to get to this point, but it's likely where this is going. I hope it's not, but it looks like it's probably going this way. I saw this online, and it was really interesting that at the end of Rebels Season 1, he does say that there are things worse than death, so that might be a hint as to what's to come for him. My personal theory is that all Jedi Temple Guards are the same species. Since the Grand Inquisitor in Rebels, it's revealed that he was a Jedi Temple Guard. My theory is that all the Jedi Temple Guards, since we never see their faces, are all that species. And since they are all the same species, they are simply swapped out as the Grand Inquisitor if one happens to die. So there continues to be a continuity there, and it shows the image that the Grand Inquisitor is undefeatable, and it makes the Empire even more scary. And since the Inquisitors are all under the command of Vader, he uses this idea of being promoted to the Grand Inquisitor to manipulate other Inquisitors to go above and beyond for his favor, like he does with Reva in this episode. He says, oh, you might be promoted to the Grand Inquisitor, when in reality he might never have the intention of actually promoting anyone to Grand Inquisitor. He always just has this lineup of other Grand Inquisitors that are the same species as the one that we saw in Rebels and here in the episode 2 when he dies. The main backup I use for this theory is that Jedi Temple Guards are much more trained than the typical Padawan or Jedi Knight, so they would be more qualified to be the Grand Inquisitor. I mean, Reva obviously came as a Padawan. Same thing with Trilla in Fallen Order, and we don't know much about the other ones, but we kind of can assume that they're all unhinged Padawans or Jedi Knights that never reach the rank of Master, and they train with Jedi Temple Guards, so it's likely that the Jedi Temple Guards are much more capable swordsmen and Force-sensitive beings, so it would make sense if they were the highest ranking among the Inquisitors. So that's just my theory, but we won't know for sure, but I do know for sure that they would not retcon Rebels like this. The last two positive notes, Net B and Lola Supremacy, they've been killing the droid game in the show. I love both of them. That is all. So now to my negatives. I think the biggest one for me as a score person, I'm a bit disappointed that they haven't used any original scores or motifs so far for any of the legacy characters. Obviously, we got a beautiful new Obi-Wan theme, and I do appreciate the new score for Vader, but I think bringing back Imperial March or Leia's theme would go a long way to adding that connection with the characters. Jeremy Johns brought this up in a video, and I thought it was such a good point. I wish we had heard Leia's theme when she was first introduced, or at least a piece of it, or something reworked with that flute, or obviously when Darth Vader comes on the scene, we hear that Imperial March. There's 3 more episodes, so we might hear it, but it was just a good point that I heard, and as a score person, it really spoke to me, and I think they should utilize those legacy scores as much as possible. I know I'm just piling on here and I'm beating a dead horse, but I think we all know that forest chase scene was atrocious. That looked like it should have been on the CW. That is not what a $20 million an episode show should look like. The choreography should have been way more creative. The scenery, the environment should have been much more adapted for a small person to kind of hide or get out of the way. But, having like a little mangy tree branch stop one of these like super serious bounty hunters that was hired by an Inquisitor was so lame. And the fact that there was like a straightaway and Leia couldn't be caught by 2 grown adults in the Star Wars galaxy was just atrocious. She should have just been captured right away, but I'm sure they didn't want to have Leia look weak, just kind of like, oh, she got captured right away. They wanted to show she put up a fight, but man, did that chase scene look terrible. The street chase scene was a little better, but not that much more. Also, Reva's roof parkour was just kind of odd, and there was just way too many flips and moves. So some of the choreographic choices in the show have been kind of odd for the quality that you should expect with this kind of show. So this is a nitpick, but it's not really a nitpick. Obi-Wan and Leia are in the back of Freck's vehicle with the stormtroopers. Sidebar, Freck, I hate you. I trusted you so much. You looked so nice. You were a stupid little mole, and now you're the worst rat in the planet. I hate you. Okay, so back to the stormtroopers. Why didn't Reva send out a picture of Obi-Wan to all the Imperial outposts of the planets he could potentially go to? She had the beautiful Jedi Council school pictures that she sent out to the bounty hunters on the last planet to tell everyone that Obi-Wan's on the planet. And she had the manifest that showed where the ship was going. Why didn't she just send out a picture to all the Imperial outposts and be like, hey, be on the lookout for Obi-Wan. He hasn't changed his haircut or his beard at all, so he kind of looks exactly the same. But the stormtroopers was like, you see any Jedi? Like, we're looking for a Jedi. Like, they even knew they were looking for a Jedi. So why? I do not know. I know they were trying to go for, like, tension. Oh, look how close the enemy is to Obi-Wan and finding him. But, like, come on, guys, we're not stupid. Like, why didn't she send out the picture and be like, hey, look for this guy? I know not every stormtrooper is going to know what Obi-Wan looks like, but she had a picture. She had a picture, and she used it for bounty hunters. Why not use it for the Imperials? I think that's a genuine criticism. I don't know if that's a nitpick, but that was kind of silly. Okay, my last nitpick. I feel like the lightsaber hanging shot from the first episode could have been done a lot better. First of all, I have no idea how that Jedi knew where Obi-Wan was or knew where to find him in the middle of the desert. That was weird. But I just thought like they showed too much. I feel like if they just showed the hanging feet with the crowd looking up in disbelief, it would have been a lot scarier. It would have shown the iron grip of the Imperial Empire. The Imperial Empire, yeah. The Empire across the galaxy. But then they turn the camera around and you see this awkward pose of this guy being hung like by his like underarms. He's like weirdly being held by wires. I feel like they should have just shown from like the waist down, like shown the lightsaber on his belt, indicating he's a Jedi to everyone, and just showed his hanging feet. Like, yeah, we know he's dead. We don't need to see his like weird, awkward face like hanging by underarms. So, of course, you didn't want to show the hanging, even though you showed hanging in Pirates of the Caribbean like 10 years ago. But I get it. You didn't want to show the hanging, fine. But I feel like there could have been a more subtle way to show it. And yeah, I just thought it could have been done better. But once again, nitpick, it was like a 10-second shot, whatever. One more thing, I'll end on a positive note. I really enjoyed when Leia asked Obi-Wan, what is the Force like? What does it feel like? And Obi-Wan basically says it's like turning on a light when you're afraid in the darkness. And that really called back, to me at least, to Empire Strikes Back at the end when Leia uses the Force for the first time to sense where Luke is. That was pretty much her lowest moment. She had just lost Han to being frozen in carbonite, and she didn't know where Luke was. She didn't know if he was safe. So you could say that that was her darkest, most scared moment, that she thought she was about to lose the 2 most important people in her life. And that's when she called on the Force. That's when she turned on the light in the darkness. So I thought that was a cool little thing. Not sure if it was entirely connected, but that's what resonated with me when Obi-Wan said that line, and especially saying that line to Leia. So just wanted to also mention that. And I think that's just about everything. I'm sure I missed some stuff that you might really have liked, but please let me know your thoughts on my Instagram. Direct message me. Let's talk about Kenobi at @star_wars_mark of balance. I'm so happy with the series overall, but I know the best is yet to come, and I love that all the footage that we've seen from the trailers has already been shown in the show, so the next 3 episodes are going to be brand new. And I feel like we've only scratched the surface of Obi-Wan and Vader's conflict. I'm so excited for the last 3 episodes. I just heard a rumor that there's going to be like a season 2 or whatever. I really hope that's not true. And if they're going to continue this era of storytelling, please don't do another season of Kenobi. If you're going to do another thing, do another thing of Vader. Fine, whatever. But just like don't drag out Kenobi's story. But this was supposed to be like an event, a 6-part event, a closed story. Perfect. Don't overstay the welcome. Please. Thank you. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.